Welcome back. Thank you for joining us once again on Spontaneous Remarks, the podcast where you never know what's going to be said or done. You never know what's going to happen. You just got to know what we're going to be talking about. Season 1 is here, Nostalgic Nerdness, and every episode is going to be a trip down memory lane, places from my childhood that, just nostalgic. That's all it's about, guys. That's all it's about. Now, the unexpected is always on the menu. But we're going to dive headfirst into the whirlwind of this nostalgia. Last week, we took a trip down the dusty back roads of Hazard County with those good old boys from the Dukes of Hazzard. But today, we're going to spin the wheel of Nerdville and see where it takes us. So strap in, secure those pocket protectors, and get ready for another round of spontaneous remarks. Woo! All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I like that music. I don't know who come up with it, but it's pretty good. All right, well, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Spontaneous Remarks. I'll be your host, Mark Lawson, and we're going to dive right into the nostalgic nerdness of Season 1. With this episode, let me get my wheel of Nerdville pulled up, and we'll see what this episode is going to be all about. Alright, so here we go. We're going to spin the wheel of Nerdville. Woo, it's spinning now. What's it going to be, folks? What's it going to be? Ta-da! Back to the Future. Woo! Ta-da-da, ta-da-da-da, ta-da-da-da. Well, anyway, that's my poor rendition of the Back to the Future theme, and you know what? I don't care. It sounded good that way too. I don't care what y'all say. Well, Back to the Future is a timeless classic. It was released on July 3rd, 1985, and directed by Robert Zemeckis. Also produced by Steven Spielberg. Now, Steven Spielberg is, his name is up there at the very top. Back in the day, he was producing E.T. He did all of the Indiana Jones movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade. Not to mention, he also did Poltergeist, The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun. Those were just a few of the 80s movies that he produced between 1980 and 1989. And so this movie starred Michael J. Fox as the teenager Marty McFly and Christopher Lloyd as the eccentric scientist Dr. Emmett Brown. The two were friends, even though it's kind of weird because Doc Brown was quite older than Marty. Marty was a teenager. And so, yeah, I could understand why his parents at one time, kind of scolded him by hanging around Dr. Brown. But anyway. So, the plot of the film is Marty accidentally travels back in time to 1955. And the problem with that is that he accidentally bumps into his mom and dad before they got together, which causes a bit of a problem for Marty since his mom accidentally falls kind of in, she's got a crush on him, which is kind of weird because he inadvertently is destroying his future. Thankfully, nothing weirder than that happens, but I don't want to give the plot too much away because it is a very good movie. It's spawned two sequels, Back to the Future Part 2 and Back to the Future Part 3. And so I would strongly suggest that if you haven't seen these movies, you need to go right now. Don't do it. Don't stop the podcast. You can wait till after the podcast is done. But go watch them today. At least the first one. The cast also included Leah Thompson as Marty's mother, Lorraine, Crispin Glover as George McFly, and Thomas F. Wilson as Biff Tannen. Biff was the bully. And so Back to the Future, huge phenomenon. There was sci-fi, comedy, adventure, the music. I mean, it's one of the best scored films. Just the music. You will not forget the music that's lined throughout the movie. It's amazing. Um, so many different things happening with pop culture from this one movie being produced. Like I said, there was two sequels, animated series, video games. One of the NES games of Back to the Future was horrible. Like I don't even know what they were thinking when they made it, but we'll leave that for another time. Theme park attractions, Universal Studios, big theme park attraction there, I believe. And a lot of people wanted the car, the DeLorean. One of the lines in the movie is Marty says, "You built a time machine out of a DeLorean?" Like you couldn't believe it that he built a time machine out of this car. Apparently, at the time, maybe it was real popular. Maybe it wasn't popular enough. I'm not sure. But Doc Brown's response was, "The way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine, you might as well do it with some style." So the DeLorean, I guess, was more of a luxury car. It looked like. Because they had the doors that instead of opening like a regular door, the doors opened up, kind of like an airplane or a wings. So pretty interesting. I actually saw one not too long ago around the town I live in. It even had the little license plate on the back that said "Out of Time," which was well, they call it not a duplicate, but a replica. It was a replica of that car. So anyway, time travel, friendship, all the consequences of one actions are packed into this movie, and it makes you wonder what you would do if you could go back in time. Would you change something? Would you take a chance on messing the future up? Because let me tell you, all those little things that you think don't mean nothing, you turn left when you should have turned right, it has a big, profound effect on you in the future. But it's a very great movie and very fun to watch. Just a very fun movie. Now, before Marty McFly, there was another guy that had already filmed part of it. I think his name was Eric Stoltz. I'm looking it up right now because I don't remember. Yeah, he was cast early as Marty McFly in Back to the Future. I believe that Michael J. Fox could not be signed immediately because of his tie-ins with Family Ties, his contracts and things like that. But eventually he was recast as Marty McFly. Michael J. Fox was, rather. And so Back to the Future has been a huge movie since. I sit down with my daughter not too long ago and we watched all three of them, and she ended up really liking them. It's time travel movies to me. Time travel is something I've always been interested in because even with just thinking about like if Marty went back in time, he was he couldn't show his social security card because he hadn't been born yet, so that number was not even either given to anybody or not even thought up yet. His driver's license was useless. He had no money. If he did have any money, it would be thought of as counterfeit because the year that is printed on every piece of money we have. So it would be a very horrible thing to go back in time when you're from the future because you have nothing to help you get anything. You can't get. It's just there's so many things, and I'm not going to take the time to talk about all those because, man, I'm going down a rabbit hole right now. So, so anyway, hey, watch Back to the Future. It's a very good movie, and I know that you'll like it. So, one of the things that we can talk about is some of the interesting facts about the movie. I already mentioned Eric Stoltz was cast earlier as Marty McFly. He'd filmed a couple of scenes. You can look them up on YouTube to see kind of which scenes it was. But also, the DeLorean as the time machine. Actually, the filmmaker's first choice was a refrigerator, using that as a time machine. But they eventually settled on the DeLorean just because it looked better, and it was, I mean, you could get around in it better than you could a fridge. Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox, he was trying to film the family show's Family Ties during the day and working on Back to the Future at night. So that was kind of part of the problem. Was it was like working two jobs, but you didn't have no time for sleep. There was also the subplot in the film where Doc Brown has to get plutonium as the fuel source for the DeLorean, and the only way you couldn't just go buy plutonium. It's not on the shelf anywhere at Walmart. So he had to agree to make a bomb for some Libyan terrorists in order to get the plutonium. Of course, this was not. He was just using them as a means to an end. I've read that Steven Spielberg probably did this as a desire to pay homage to his friend director John Milius, known for his fascination with military themes. So that was something in there that just a little subplot of the film. Now, in Back to the Future 2, the hoverboard was introduced because Marty McFly got around on a skateboard in the first one. That was his mode of transportation. Well, when he went back in time to 1955, I guess the skateboard had first been invented, so he was able to use an actual skateboard. But in Back to the Future 2, he went into the future, and the hoverboard did not have wheels, so he had to figure out how to get around on a hoverboard, which was the same concept as a skateboard. It just hovered across the ground. And there's been replicas made of that. I saw one on a video the other day in the background of somebody's house that also did pop culture videos. So now, here's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know. So there's a mall in Back to the Future called the Twin Pines Mall. And earlier, remember, I told you that anytime that you make a mistake or change something in the past, well, that would directly affect the future. And so when Marty gets back goes back in time by accident, he runs over Old Man Peabody's pine trees, one of them. So when at the end of the movie, when everything's said and done, and he's back in the present, this mall, the name had changed from Twin Pines Mall to Lone Pines Mall. Because that's just the ripple effects of time travel. You make one mistake, and it changes the future forever. One of the most memorable scenes, and I didn't know this memorable scenes, I didn't know this at the time, but Marty performs Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good at their dance, their school dance. And Marty McFly, or actually Michael J. Fox, actually can play the guitar. So while Michael J. Fox learned to play the guitar for the scene, the actual guitar solo was performed by professional musician Tim May. But Johnny Be Good was the song that they used in the movie, and I remember the group that was playing for the show my gosh, I can't even think straight. For the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, the school dance, the lead singer's name was Marvin Berry, and there's a scene where he calls his cousin on the phone. He's like, "Hey Chuck, it's your cousin Marvin. You remember that new sound you're looking for? Listen to this." And it was the guitar playing sound. So it was like that was kind of a kind of little nod to Chuck Berry, as he learned how to play Johnny Be Good by just that one scene, because Marty brought it back from the future to him inadvertently. So when you start talking about time travel, it gets really crazy, really deep sometimes. So one of the things also that Back to the Future brought to the table was the memorable lines, a lot of memorable lines from the film. Probably the number one at the very end of the movie, Doc Brown says, "Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads." So that's probably the number one remembered line from the movie. Also, Doc Brown would oftentimes say things like "Great Scott" when he was surprised at something. And then there was the, if my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious, I can't say it, but anyway. And then, I mentioned this earlier, but I want to go ahead and re-mention it again. Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean? Marty McFly would often say, "This is heavy," meaning this is serious stuff, and Doc would respond with, "Weight has nothing to do with it." And then the 1.21 gigawatts! 1.21 gigawatts! Great Scott! And Marty would say, "What the heck is a gigawatt?" George McFly, poor guy, he couldn't write worth nothing, and he was trying to tell Lorraine McFly that she was his destiny, but he said, "You're my density." She's like, "What?" And then I mentioned this earlier as well. You know, the way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style? And then Biff Tannen, he always had the "McFly, I thought I told you never to come in here," or "Think, McFly, think," as he knocked on his head like he's being silly. And then Marty McFly says about the Johnny B. Good and his guitar performance, where it kind of went on a tangent and he was sliding all across the stage. He said, "I guess you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are going to love it." Talking about the music. So a lot of these lines have been quoted and referenced in various forms of media, just showing how popular this movie did become. There's so many things in this movie. So what else can be said about Back to the Future having a lasting impact on our pop culture since its release in 1985? Well, I mentioned it earlier. The whole thing about time travel. The film popularized several time travel tropes that have been since become staples in science fiction and storytelling. Concepts like something happening in the past, you accidentally changing something that affects the entire future, those paradoxes. Oh, I didn't even think about mentioning that. So Doc Brown would mention, like, when we go back to the past, we're going to have two us's there. We're going to have the Doc Brown of 1955, and then if he was in the 1985 Doc Brown, if he went back in time, it'd be him as well, 1955. So, it hurts my brain thinking about that. And so just the imagination of audiences have been revisited in countless films, TV shows, and books. The DeLorean, I mentioned that about it becoming an iconic symbol, much like the General Lee. In fact, on the popular video game, PlayStation game Burnout, a couple of the extra cars that you can get, one looks just like the DeLorean, one looks just like the General Lee. They copyright, or not copyright, but trademark purposes, they couldn't use the actual names of the cars. Characters of Marty McFly, Doc Brown, and Biff Tannen have become figures in storytelling. I mean, Marty represents that underdog hero. Doc is the crazy inventor, the crazy scientist, and then Biff is the classic bully antagonist, the one that was always there to try to stop Marty from going back to where he needed to be, Back to the Future. All right, so we're getting close to being out of time, but hey, I really appreciate you guys sitting in on this, and hope that you are enjoying watching or listening to the podcast, rather. Maybe in the future sometime I'll have I'll be able to have YouTube videos as well to back up the audio. So thank you again for joining me on this nostalgic journey through the world of nerdy delights in season 1. Now, from the winding roads of Hazard County that we had last week to the countless memories we've revisited with Back to the Future, I know it's been a blast exploring the treasures of my past. But you know what, dear listeners? Our journey is far from over. Join me next time as we dive into another beloved piece of pop culture. But until then, keep those engines revved, keep your spirits high, stay tuned, stay nerdy, and remember, the adventures never truly end when you're part of the Spontaneous Remarks family. Catch you on the flip-flop.